What is happening, everybody? MG here. MG Covers bringing you a brand new sports handicapping video. Title of this video, a super simple method to creating sports betting stat models. I've been wanting to make this video for about 3 days and finally put all the pieces together, and you will get a ton of value in this video. Very simple way to create sports betting stat models. We're going to use, I think, 4 different sports, give you 4 different examples applicable to all. Before we do that, if you're watching this video for the first time, greatly appreciate you subscribing to the channel, also liking this video if it provides you some value. It's a great channel to follow if you want to learn the unadulterated truth about sports betting. If you want to follow me on social media, MGCovers, cover spelled with the Z, give out a ton of content on there as well. Also do something called Free Fridays. You can see the screen name, MGCovers, cover spelled with the Z. We give out all my lines for all sports every Friday, so you get a ton of value simply by following me. Now, I am so excited to bring this video, and I think more times than not, when I create a video related about stat models, it gets a ton of views because people are super fascinated and super curious about how to build stat models. Why? Because it is one of the secrets to being successful in this business long term. And it's also something that is very difficult to do. Okay, so the whole premise of creating a stat model, or the very first step, is to find stat or stats that correlate to winning, right? That's very difficult to do. Then after you do that, you would create, this is how I teach, you would create a power ranking, ranking the teams from 1 to 30 or 1 to 25, how many, depending on how many teams are in that particular sport. Then the next difficult part is to create a line for each of those teams. This is very difficult to do, and this creates, in a lot of ways, a margin of error when you do this, because when you're assigning a team a number, regardless of how you calculate it, there is a margin of error in doing that. And let me explain. So let's look at this example here. So these are my top 10 teams via my model for NBA for 319. Okay. So let's say that based on how I create a line, let's say we have Houston. My line for Houston is -6. Okay. Now I'll come over here and I'll look at Houston. Okay. The sports book line is -6 as well. So then I would look at that and say, well, there's no value. I'm not playing Houston. Okay. Well, the problem with that is that depending on how you calculate, that may or may not be the best approach. Because here is the concept that I'm going to introduce. I was trying to think of a name for this. If you follow me on for Instagram last 3 or 4 days, I've called this the top 10 concept. I'm going to label this the alto concept. Alto is the Spanish word for high. And if you think about this, it makes perfect sense from a statistical perspective as well. If you create power rankings based on stats that correlate to winning, the higher up you go in your power rankings, the higher percentage chance that team has to win that game. Conversely, the lower you go in your power rankings, the lower percentage chance that team has of winning the game. You say, well, that's obvious. That's true. But here's the problem when you create an arbitrary number, like I just did with Houston. Whether you make that line 3, whether you make it 7, whatever you make that line, if Houston, via the model, is the third best team via your model, that means they have a high chance of winning and covering. So the alto concept is very simple. You just play the, quote, top teams via your model, the teams that are high ranked in your power ranking, irregardless of what the line is via the sports book, and you're not even going to create a line. Because like I mentioned before, the margin of error, if you create a line and you compare that line to the sports book, it may or may not have value. So rather than complicate the model per se, you simply just play the teams, and you'll have to figure that out. Maybe it's the top 5, maybe it's the top 7, maybe it's the top 10 teams via your model. Irregardless of the sportsbook line, it would be a play. Okay. So let me give you, before I show you some results, just think about this for a second. Let's say you create a model, a pretty good model. You have the 17th team playing the 25th best team. Now, if you've done your model correctly, the 17th team will be favored over the 25th team, right? That's logic. In your opinion, based on what we know about stats, which would be the better play, to play the 17th team playing against the 25th team, or would it be better to play the third best team playing the 17th best team? Based on the alto concept, the third place team would win at a higher rate than the 17th team playing the 25th best team, even though you might have value playing the 17th ranked team. So the alto concept is very simple. You just find whatever number works, either the top 5, top 7, top 10 teams, play those teams irregardless of the line. And you might have to set up different criteria, and I'm going to show you in a few examples. So let's go to Friday. Friday's top 10 teams via the model for NBA: Boston, New Orleans, Houston, Knicks, Sacramento, Indiana, Dallas, Denver, OKC. Also, to know, this is predicated on the fact that, or the premise that, you have to create a good model. The model has to be good, meaning it has the stats you use have to correlate to winning. And I'm going to link a video at the end of this on how to do that. So those are our top 10 teams. Now let's go to the lines from Friday. And let's take a look. So the very first game, we have New Orleans. Now, the other ancillary benefit of doing this, we're not using any other criteria. We're not using line movement. We're not checking for injuries. We're not looking at anything else. It's just basic what they call a bottom-up approach. We're strictly using the model and giving no consideration to anything else. That being said, one advantage of doing this way, you can play games early, and it's advantageous to do this. Why? Because if you know your model is sharp and effective, that means more times than not, the line is going to move towards my lines, right? So look at the New Orleans. This line, case in point, opens up at 7.5. Some books took it all the way to 8. Some books left it at 7.5. So if you play the opening line, they actually won by 8. So that would be a win. We didn't even create a line for New Orleans, right? And what we know about NBA, the criteria I would set up, I would play a lot of different ways to do it, but the way I would approach this would only play teams that are minus 9.5 or less. Why? Because we know those teams cover about 87% of the time. I did another video on that. You can watch. It's probably like 3 or 4 videos back up on my channel. The next team, the New York Knicks, we scroll down here. The Knicks were minus, they opened up at plus 1.5. The line ended up moving to -3. If we play it at plus 1.5, we could have gotten dog money, maybe playing it at like plus 105. They win in a blowout 98-74. So both of those games, the line moved in our favor. Let's take a look now. OKC is the next one. That line opens at -8, pretty much stays there. OKC won, but they didn't cover, so that would be a loss. Let's move down to Houston. Take a look at that opening line there, -4. So if we were doing this live, we would play the -4 opening line, and it ended up moving in our favor again, -6.5 to -7, depending on the book. Houston wins in a blowout, 123-107. So again, all we did was we looked at the top 10 teams via a model. We checked the book's opening line, and those lines that or those teams that had a line of less than 9.5, we would simply play. Boom, we go 3-1. Now, this concept, playing it this way, since we started for the last 19 games, the last 21 games is 16-5. And the reason I entertained this was the model had the traditional way I was capping with this model had lost a lot of its edge. So I was looking for a better, more efficient way and sort of brainstormed this idea. So again, not creating any lines, very simple way to handicap. And again, the whole premise of the alto concept, the higher your power rankings are, the teams that are high in your power rankings should win at a higher ratio than the lower ranked teams. So then the simplicity of this, you would simply just play the higher ranked teams. Now, let me show you something from Major League Baseball from last year. And this is when I first really discovered this. So this isn't something I just put together the last few days. Now, Major League Baseball last year, this sport has always been a challenge has been a challenge for the last, prior to last year, the two previous years, we had losing seasons in Major League Baseball, was frustrated. This model that I created for Major League Baseball was phenomenal. This is the best model I've ever created in my life, and you'll see the results here in a second. Now, what I did with baseball is I said there's a lot of variance in baseball, meaning you have starting pitching, you have hitting, you have relief pitching, a lot of moving parts in baseball, very difficult to handicap. So what I did was I said, factor into variance, I'm just going to play underdogs. And underdogs are just underdogs via the books line, but only teams that are in my top 10. So if a team was in the top 10 of my power rankings and they were an underdog, it would be a play. And that was all we did. So let's take a look at how this thing starts out in May. I'll just highlight this all the way through May. Hopefully that's showing up on the screen. So check out the first month. So that ends up at 12.79 units the very first month. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was the biggest unit gain for this model. And again, the way I'm grading that is that's one play, one unit equals one play. That means if you wager plus 175 and it loses, you lose 1 unit. If it wins, you win 1.75 units. And that's the correct way to track a model if you're back testing, et cetera, because that way you're able to calculate your ROI. So very effective. Again, we're not creating any lines at all. All we're doing is playing top 10 teams via the model. And I don't want to bog down this video, but if you go all the way to the bottom, and I want to make a point too, this is a really solid point to make here. Take a look at what happens in August. See if some of you can catch it. The amount of volume decreased significantly. So it was up, still positive, about 5 units. But notice there were very few plays, maybe about, what's that look like? About maybe 20 plays for August. The reason being is there was a ton of value at the beginning of the season because the books and the public struggled to figure out, quote, which teams were good, which teams were bad. But the model that I had, that I created for MLB, very sharp model. So we're able to get a ton of value at the beginning of the season. As the books adjust, as the general public adjusts, even the sharps, it's more difficult to find value. So we didn't have as many plays late in the season. However, let's take a look at these results. Absolutely mind-blowing. Now, this is crazy. The criteria I use for dogs, I only play teams that are plus 120 or greater. 89 and 71. So that was 55%. It was up 47 units, 47 units, which is insane, right? So think about this. We weren't handicapping pitching. We weren't handicapping lineups. We were simply playing teams via the model, top 10 via the model, which is insane. Now, I will tell you what I've realized with Major League Baseball. Since we were playing dogs this particular way, and those of you that are clients or are looking to be clients here when baseball season rolls around using this model, I would recommend playing late, simply because line movement, majority of the time, it sounds crazy, moved against us. Another reason why Major League Baseball is extremely difficult to handicap. I didn't use any line movement. I felt like line movement was off, even with a lot of the sharp books. So the later we waited, the more value we got on the sportsbook line. So incredible. It's an example of it working long term. Let's take a look at yet another example. Now, this is a DM I just got from one of my clients regarding the NHL model. He did the same exact thing. Now, the criteria I set for NHL, because you can have you can have lines that are minus 220 or all over the place. So I made a criteria so that it would be very easy to pull the trigger, so to speak. So what I did was any team that was in the top 10, you would basically play it up to minus 150 books line. If it was over minus 150, you would play it on the puck line, or in this case, he played it on the minus one three-way line. And you can see since the 16th, I think, when I sent that video out last Friday or Saturday, it's 10, 5, and 1, including money line and three-way minus one spreads, up 6.07 units. Again, no handicapping goalies, starting lineups, not giving any consideration line movement. Simply playing top 10 teams via the model. If it's up to minus 150, you play it on the money line. Over that, he was playing it on the minus one three-way line. So again, another great thing about this is the time factor. So if you were able to create a really good model, no handicap at all. You wake up in the morning, boom, you could put your plays in. If you're playing dogs, you might want to wait late. If you're playing favorites, play early. So there's the NHL example. Now, finally, the last one I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you the NHL example. And again, check this out. And you have to realize the difficult part is taking a stat. Now, it's possible you can do it. I teach clients how to build models. There's a link in the description if you want to sign up to be on that email list. We'll have 2 openings here in about a week if you're interested in learning how to build models with me. And this is going to be one of the things that I'm going to put a huge emphasis on teaching this way, because again, if you can find those stats that correlate to winning, may not even be necessary to convert those stats into a line. Now with the PGA Tour model, let me pull this up here. Let's go back up here to the top. Okay, so if you see the blue, these are the top 10 golfers via the model. Now, the previous 2 years, I tried to pick the winner, which was extremely difficult to do. We were up 12 units 2 years ago and lost 6 units last year doing that. So overall net positive for 2 years, but I felt like a better way to cap soccer was to pick 2 golfers to finish in the top 20. So again, going back to incorporating the alto concept, what I did was, okay, so we have these 10 golfers here, right? So I don't want to lay juice because golf is sort of unpredictable. A guy can have a bad round. So what I did was, via the alto concept, I played the top 2 golfers that were dogs to finish in the top 20. So in this particular, the Mexico Open, I picked this golfer at plus 125 to finish in the top 20. This golfer here, plus 150 to finish in the top 20. We move down here. So the top 2 golfers via my model were Henley and Lee for the next tournament. Played Henley at plus 140, played Lee at plus 160. Let's go down here to the Arnold Palmer Classic. Okay, so this was what they call an elevated event. So we had a lot of favorites here. So the first dog was Fleetwood at plus 100. The next dog ranked was Homa at plus 115. And then finally, the Players Championship, another elevated event. We played Schauffele at plus 105. He was the number 1 golfer via my model, and McIlroy was number 2 via my model at plus 105. Check out the results. So overall, it went 5 and 3, up 3.1 units using the alto concept. So again, didn't have to create a line, just super simple. Had to do a little bit of educated sort of planning and strategy there to figure out the best way to play it. But again, alto concept, very simple. You don't have to create a line for your model, but the premise is built on finding the stats that correlate to winning, then ranking those teams in 1 to 30. And then the alto concept, you're simply going to play the top 10s or the top 5, top 7, top 10 teams via your model, however you want to handicap it. Again, it might take a little bit of research. You might have to do a back test, but super simple way to do it without having to convert those stats into lines. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like it. If you want access to all my power rankings, you can get that $50 a month. You also get access to all my coaching videos. We have about 170 coaching videos on the website now. So a great way to get better in this business. If you want access to everything I just mentioned, in addition to all my plays, $100 a month. If you join for the year, you save about $100 off the monthly. and you can join for $500. I'm sorry, you save about $600 off the year. So you can join for $500, get access to everything on the site for 1 year. Talk to you guys soon. Good luck, and good luck incorporating the Alto concept. Peace.